Varmt välkomna till denna bolagspresentation av ett mycket intressant bolag, OssDsign, som befinner sig i en, kan man faktiskt säga utan överord, enorm tillväxtfas, framförallt på USA-marknaden. Bolaget kommer presenteras av vd Morten Henneveld och presentationen hålls på engelska. Please, Morten, do start.
Thank you very much. I probably understand what you're saying. I'm not sure you understand what I'm saying. I'm Danish. So, listen, thank you very much for having me again. Of course, this is an event we've been looking forward to, in particular after we just posted some exceptionally strong Q1 numbers on Tuesday, but I'll come back to that. As normal, we have the usual disclaimer. Just if you don't know who OssDsign is, so we operate in the orthopedic industry. It's a fairly large, 53 billion. We are today in two segments, what's called CMF, craniomaxillofacial, with our cranial product, and in orthobiologics with a nanosynthetic bone graft. Today we operate in 10 markets globally. But before we get into, I would say, the real exciting stuff, I want to take a step back and just talk a little bit as to why we are even here. If we start with the top on our cranial business, unfortunately there are an enormous amount of traumatic brain injuries every year. Some will need to be hospitalized and some will eventually need an implant. Now the conventional method is to use plastic, it's called PEEK, or titanium. And what we see with the conventional technologies, you see an exceptional high rate of infection in those implants, at least 10%, many indications that is significantly higher. Now, if you get an infection in an implant close to the brain, of course that needs to be removed. So when you have infection, that leads to a lot of revisions. If you take our bone graft and we are applying it into the spine business, unfortunately, as we grow older, and we do get older, and there are more people getting older, our spine just naturally degenerates. We would get what's called spinal instability, and then we would need to have what's also called a fusion surgery, essentially using some kind of metalware, screws or rods or plates, that you stabilize the spine. But what you want with that metalware is for that to integrate with the body, and for that purpose, you use some kind of bone graft. It can be the body's own, what's called autograft, or you can use what we have, which is a nanosynthetic bone graft that comes without the risk that you typically see from, for instance, other donor-based products like allograft. But today the outcome is that 1 in 5 does not achieve that fusion. So when you add it all up, you're talking hundreds of thousands of patients every year that have to undergo revision surgery. It's extremely painful for the patients, but also, I would say, almost absurdly costly to society. A revision surgery in the US for any of this probably starts around $100,000. So there is an opportunity to make life better for patients, but certainly also save costs for the healthcare society. Now, what we're bringing to market is essentially two key products. What's unique about both of them is that it really is the next generation bone replacement products. If we start on the left side, this is where OssDsign was founded. It's our cranial-specific or patient-specific implant. It has absolutely stellar performance. As you can see, we now have a post-market surveillance of 2,000 implants, showing 1.4%, right? So you can put that in the context of the 10% or even more that we showed before. So it is an exceptional clinical performance on anything else in the marketplace. It's sold basically globally. In the US, we're actually the only implant that has an osteoconductive claim, which means that the implant actually resorbs and turns into bone during the healing process. Now, this was OssDsign for many years. Then we acquired a company in 2020 and we entered the orthobiologics business. And what we have here is an off-the-shelf, very high margin, I'll come back to that in a second, that is really targeting standard procedures. Now, as you can see, this is a product that it's preclinical. We're collecting clinical data right now, but it has exceptional preclinical data. It actually has a performance in that study with the very best drug. It's a product called BMP2 from Medtronic, It's actually not a bone graft, it's a drug. It costs 4 times as much, and it's a high-risk product to use, so surgeons are a little bit concerned about using it. But as you can see, it is a performance where we're showing 90% fusion at 12 weeks and 100 at 26. So really, really meaningful. As I will show you in a second, it certainly resonates with surgeons in the US right now. Now, when we made the shift in the strategic shift in the company and go into the orthobiologics business, it has some profound opportunities for the company. First and foremost, it brought us at least a 5x addressable market and therefore potential. But equally important, cranial is an interesting business. The typical, I would say, industry average is around 70%. But then look at the orthobiologics, where you're looking at gross profit at 90% or sometimes even north of that. So, of course, as the orthobiologics business gets bigger and bigger, it's going to be highly accretive to both top line and margins in the company. We've decided bone graft is actually used head to toe. It can be applied in many ways. We also have regulatory clearance. That means that we can use it elsewhere. But as you can see, we've decided to focus on spine, and we've done that for 2 reasons. One, the market opportunity clearly is in spine. That is where surgeons are using most bone graft. As it happens, many of us have a past life before OssDsign in spine and biologics. We actually have in the company more years of experience in spine and biologics than we do in cranial. So therefore, it also means that as we started commercializing, we know the hospitals, we know who likes synthetic bone graft, we have relationships with the doctors, we know how to get it into hospitals. So of course, that has given us a head start as we went to market. So we started this journey a couple of years ago with a new strategy in the company. On Tuesday, we just reported our Q1 results, 203% growth globally, 399 in the US, 74% in the markets outside the US. Our cranial business, which is this little icon here, showing 100% growth. And then, of course, it's still early days. We're showing 1,100% growth on our biologics business. So all in all, as you can imagine, a result that we are exceptionally pleased with, and I'll show you a second, because we think it is sustainable. Now, the highlight, of course, is the US. What you see here, each bar is rolling 12 months. And, you know, for a period of time, we entered the US in 2017. For a period of time, I would say we're growing steadily, probably in line with the market. And then you see around Q2, Q1, last year, something really happened. We launched Catalyst, and there you see the exponential growth. So we have right now a rolling 12 month that keeps going up and is now at 3x to what it used to be. But I think it's also a little bit interesting if you look at the absolute number. So in the last quarter alone, we added 11 million in sales on a rolling 12-month basis. Now, if you do the math, you can figure out that we actually only got there around the end of 21. So to say it in a different way, we have added as much incremental sales in the US in the last quarter than the company did in the first 5 years after entering the US. I think that's pretty mind-blowing. It also means in the US right now, we just posted our 4th consecutive quarter of triple-digit growth. And we are seeing not just sales coming in, we're also seeing underlying metrics. So the customer base is growing, the number of repeat customers is growing, and of course, mathematically, that means that we should continue to see that in the future. There's also, as we started the journey a couple of years with the new strategy, and I'll come back to that, but there are 2 very important things happening in the company right now. So as we started in 20, US was 1/3, now it's 2/3 of sales. Bone graft already represent 41%, and it keeps going, I would say it keeps going north of that. So these 2 developments in the company will have a profound impact on sales and on margins as we look into the future, just from a pure mix effect. As we also said, we see the growth being very sustainable. This is the last 5 quarters you see here. And then the blue line is the growth adjusted for currency. So you see there is a strong underlying and accelerating growth in the business. And as I said, we see it being very sustainable. Late 21, early 22, we started making some really much bigger strategic investments into clinical. We are running a clinical trial called Top Fusion. We've set up a prospective multi-center registry in the US called Propel. Already in November of last year, we actually had 100 patients in that. We've done a safety report where we are showing a 0% device-related implications. So of course, as you bring a new product to the market, the first question you get from surgeons is it safe to use, right? As it should be. So we have now posted 1,000. We've treated 1,000 patients. We have a specific safety report on 500. So I think it's very fair to say that it's safe, and it resonates extremely well with surgeons. We had some more milestones also in the quarter. In Germany, we now reach an accumulated, having sold 750 implants. We reached 200 implants in France. A big chunk of those, I would say, have actually come in the last 2 years alone, talking to the acceleration. And then we've also managed to reduce operational lead time by 40%. And that is important in our cranial business, because the faster we can get a product into the hands of our surgeons, the higher relevance we have to capture more cases. This has been something we've worked very hard on, and it now means that we can deliver anywhere in the world a regenerative patient-specific implant in less than 3 weeks. As I said, in the early part of January, we announced that we had reached 500 patients treated with OssDsign Catalyst, and here in the middle of May, we announced that now we've reached 1,000, right? So it took 16 months to get to the first 500 patients, and it's taking about 4.5 to get to the next 500. So I think it speaks for itself. You're really seeing the acceleration in the company. So if I'm to take a little bit of a step back and saying how are things actually going overall in the company, we announced a strategy a couple of years ago. We have 5 very clear priorities that we live and breathe on a daily basis. Clearly, the first strategic priority we have is to win in the US. We are now showing 4 quarters of triple-digit growth. Our rolling 12-month momentum is up 3 times. It's now 65% of the business, and we're seeing a broader recurring customer base. So I think we are executing pretty well on that. We also said that we want to build a biologics business. We hit 17 million SEK in sales in year 1, and it's clearly now accelerating the 1,000 patients. But also, I think, interestingly, we've set up a strategic advisory board. It's headed by a very respectable surgeon from Yale. So we have some extreme high-profile surgeons on board already that of course, we are using to the best of our advantage. We also announced already on OssDsign Catalyst, the first line extension is a 1cc. It won't be a major revenue driver, but it is strategically important because what it means is that it completes the size range. So every time we get approved in a hospital, someone else have to leave, right? One comes in, one goes. And if you don't have a full size range, then they're still going to keep this other competitor on, which means that you potentially can lose the business. So the strategic importance of having that is important. Then, as I said, we have made some very meaningful investments into clinical by design. The company in the past didn't invest that much. We have increased that rate, and we've also changed the nature of our clinical agenda. So rather than sitting in a lab and looking at the science, we are now doing real programs in the real markets with real surgeons and real patients. And things are going pretty well. We have our Top Fusion first in man that's fully enrolled. We expect to publish data on that in the early part of 24. Propel, as I said, we hit 100 patients within a 6, 7, 8 month time frame. Our safety report, we had our first publications actually already from the Top Fusion study showing complete fusion already at 6 months, which is quite remarkable. It's very much in line with what we've seen in the preclinical data, so we're not that overly surprised, but it is a very strong result nevertheless. And then, as I said, extremely strong post-market surveillance. On operational efficiency, we've now managed, as I said, to reduce manufacturing process by 40%. So I think overall, we're extremely pleased with the momentum. It's significantly better than anything we've ever seen in the history of OssDsign, and we do see that continue also in the quarters and years to come. So I think that was everything for me.
Thank you very much, Morten, for a very interesting presentation. And once again, congratulations on a very solid report. I'll just do a very brief Q&A. In stark contrast to drug developing companies, here you do have a predictability from preclinical testing, the Boehner model, but you obviously have to invest for medium and long-term growth in clinical development, as well as invest in sales force in the US, which are notoriously expensive. How should, given the extremely solid top-line development you have, how should investors view OpEx going forward? Basically, what I'm after is, when do we see the inflection point coming?
No, but so let me start with your last question, right? I think we're starting to see early signs of the inflection points, right? I think when you look at the report, of course, there's some sheer upticks of looking at the numbers, but when you actually start to see the components, there's a 1.7 million hedge effect just in the profit line. We are investing a quite meaningful million amount incrementally in clinical that we didn't do last year. So I think when you start to compare those two, we are starting to see, still early days, but we're certainly starting to see the operational leverage. I think when you look at the cost, I would say our staff cost, I think they will start to stabilize now. We've been through a heavy investment phase. We are growing a lot and, growing cost, but we've also gone through a 2-year turnaround process with lots of changes also in people and the management team. And of course, those investments have been driving some cost, but I think we're starting to see that stabilize. I think we'll continue to invest in clinical. I think it would be a mistake not to, but it's going to change character. Our tough using is slowly kind of fading out now over the next year or 18 months, and then we will start something else. To me, that's an integral part of doing business in the orthopedic industry. And then, of course, you have the last component, which is the sales variable cost, the distributor commissions we have in the US. And I truly hope that is going to explode, because that means that sales will continue to go up. So I think that last part of cost will not be stable, hopefully not.
Great. I think we're all done. Once again, congratulations on the solid performance, and thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. Thank you, Morten.
Thank you very much.